Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here with my next Boruto anime review. This one's going to be for episode 273, what seems to be the last episode of this Academy arc. Overall, I thought it was decent. I wouldn't say it was like amazing or they executed on the ending like amazingly well. It did what it had to do without it doing anything too over the top or incredible. I was let down by probably one key moment in this, but otherwise, I think they executed somewhat well on, everything they'd built up to for the most part. So I'm left really kind of coming out of the arc with probably really only like two issues. One, a more broader issue with the arc, and then one more specific thing for like this episode in particular. Otherwise, like, okay, Himawari got some focus here. The main, I think, general takeaway for bigger things within the story is definitely that Kawaki had this notable experience that is sort of separate to his relationship with Boruto, with Naruto, and stuff like that. So when we eventually do whatever kind of heel turn Kawaki ends up doing to set up the flash forward chapter 1 kind of moment, it's not just going to be his sort of, in a way, like portrayal of like Boruto and Naruto. It will go against everything he's experienced in the Leaf Village, which is more than just that kind of family dynamic he has with the Uzumakis. So that, in that sense, it is quite good. Seeing Kawaki return to do the play, seeing him appear kind of separately at a different point along the track to actually, be there to say farewell to Kei was good. Speaking of Kei, I think one of the problems with this arc ends up being that everything about the Land of Bamboo was just talked about. That ultimately, it doesn't seem particularly important what was actually going on there, or really what the resolution is as such. And that's, I think, a little bit of a problem for me. That by the end, they completely neutered any sort of threat that was at play here. The other people working with Hana just get sort of captured off screen, taken out off screen. Hana ends up being the only really important character because like the minister didn't really get any chance to focus on anything. We are not focusing on her brother or her father or what was going on in the first place. And it just, I think, takes a bit away from this arc, that the approach in the finale is just that, oh yeah, I'm going back to the Land of Bamboo and I'm going to kind of take over as a leader because my father's ill or whatever and I have to protect my brother. And it's just very like by the numbers. Okay, I guess we will... I'd be surprised if we didn't see Kei again at some point. But I don't think this is going to be like a character who like consistently comes back. I think we'll see her again, but I don't know if they'll, do right the wrongs basically that kind of happened in this episode. Because otherwise, like, I thought Kei was actually a pretty well done character. I just feel that consistently across this arc, they didn't get enough, I suppose, depth, I think, as they could have out of the character, even though her goodbye and what happened here was, I think, relatively emotional in the grand scheme of things. Which leads us on to the, I suppose, in a way, main event of the last few episodes, which was what happened with Hana and her multiple personalities. So we do get a bit of an action set piece. We get some kind of names on her jutsus, and she reveals, like, I suppose, the full extent of it. So, obviously she has what seems like a signature fire style jutsu, as well as a signature style wind style jutsu that is kind of paper, like origami based. So she actually has a very unique skill set that I would have really liked to see them like address a little bit more, just to get across that is quite notable what she was able to do. And it created a bit of an interesting situation, her trapping them in the sort of sphere of paper, firing the fire attacks in, Himawari having to use her Byakugan to locate it, the little bit of a setup with Kei having the one explosive kunai that kind of created the first opening, utilizing the kind of key characters of the arc like reasonably well within the action. The actual like ending of the fight was sort of just like, okay, we've spotted her, we'll create some openings. Kawaki more or less kind of KOs her in the aftermath of this. It pretty quickly wraps up, and then we get to, okay, now we're doing the resolution on the multiple personality thing, which I think is where the other problem in the episode comes into play. And that is, they'd already shown us in previous episodes in the arc that they will show us the internal conflict between the two sides of Hana's personality. But then for some reason, at this big moment where the kinder Hana takes over, they don't show us that. And instead, they just linger on the whole class, just saying Hana over and over again. And they just externally show us that switch gradually happen. And the explanation that we get is more or less just that the assassin is tired after the battle, Hana is stronger than you think, and then eventually it happens. The hair colors invert, and the Hana that we've had for most of this arc returns. And sure, that's nice to get, but I think it would have been so much better done if, while they're chanting Hana and really showing that they care about the teacher that they've known all this time, you cut to inside Hana's mind and show the kinder Hana overtaking the assassin. Show some dialogue between those two as the switch happens once again. And just really highlight that this is the character arc for this quite notable character coming out of this arc. And do something with it. Instead, they, I think, lingered probably too much on just her relationship with the class in general, when I think the more complex dynamic is the relationship between her two personalities and what they mean, kind of what they represent. And yes, they did a little bit of discussion about this after the fact, of like kind of her realizing that that assassin side of her is sort of childish because all it is the pursuit of the mission and there's no depth. And then Naruto actually had a bit of an interesting point, kind of noting that what she wants is not to have the assassin aspect kind of like destroyed, highlighting that that's possible to do with jutsu, but instead she actually wants to have a dialogue eventually within herself about this and find some way to find, I suppose, a balance between those two sides of herself. And again, I get it. It's not, what they're doing with this arc is not highlighting that this is where Hana is going to be fully kind of like healed or whole coming out of this, but that she knows what she wants to have happen. The only issue is, like, I don't know when we're going to come back to this to get that, and that seems to be the setup, is that Naruto directly references the idea of like, oh, she's going to have a me and Kurama-esque kind of relationship where over time she might be able to have more of a balanced relationship between those two sides of her personalities, or maybe do some things where the two become one and we get to see this more developed Hana that is, you know, kind but also has some of the skills and maybe drive that the assassin personality has. But again, when are we going to come back to this? I assume we'll get another arc related to Himawari, addressing the fact that she is still going to continue in the academy, even though Kawaki isn't. And she still is unsure about if she exactly wants to become a shinobi. And I assume we'll get there eventually. But I did, in this episode, just want there to be a little bit more than what we actually got. Because this multiple personality thing was probably the key like reveal that happened in like the second half of the arc, and I just came out of it just wanting a little bit more. And given that it will probably be quite a while before we come back to this, I needed more. It was perfectly fine what we got here, and like I said, it was still a solid ending to this arc, but not quite delivering on the level that it could have. And this often happens with these arcs, is that they are quite long, longer than you think they're going to be, and you kind of feel that, okay, there's potential here if you put the effort in, but then it always just feel like they didn't quite put the full effort in to make the most out of what this actually is. And so there's always just that slight sense where just put a bit more effort into these anime original arcs and you will deliver so much more. So overall, I did enjoy this arc. I like that we did, for the most part, get a pretty notable break from, say, like Boruto being the focus and that sort of a thing. And we did just focus on Kawaki more. Now, you could argue the point that, well, Kawaki's been a focus for quite a while, but I think it's been more the Kawaki-Boruto dynamic that's been the focus. So actually getting Kawaki on his own with support from Himawari and some of the other characters that we met did make for a good arc that, like I mentioned earlier on in the review, I'm assuming this will get brought up as more individual memories, good times in the Leaf Village for Kawaki. Is he has the picture of him with his academy class, and that's a notable memory for him. So, no clue what the next arc is about, because it was just something about like a hawk. It was nice to see Sasuke, but I have no clue what exactly the idea about the upcoming arc is. It just one-off episode? Is it an arc? No idea whatsoever. So we'll have to wait until next week to really see what that is. But it does look like Boruto is going to come back into the focus again, which is fine because he wasn't really in this arc that much. So that's fine. So yeah, they're my thoughts on this episode, on this arc. Pretty good overall. In the end, I didn't think it went on longer than it like needed to. It's just it could have used a little bit of extra, just focus to deliver on the ending of the arc. But still very, very solid throughout. So in the comments, let me know what your thoughts were on this episode. Otherwise, that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.